Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to Madam. My name is Muhammad Hakim and today my group and I are going to present our study title Instagram Use, Self-Worth and Mental Health. This is our group members. There is 10 of us. First, let me begin by introducing our study. This research focuses on how Instagram usage and self-worth perceptions relate to mental health, specifically among university students like us. While Instagram is one of the most commonly used platforms among youth today, and it plays a big role in shaping how we see ourselves and how we feel. In our study, we break Instagram usage into two categories: active use, such as posting, commenting, and sending direct messages, and passive use, like scrolling through the feed or watching stories without interacting. Another key concept we explore is contingent self-worth. This means that some people base their self-esteem on how well they perform on Instagram. For example, getting many likes or followers, may, may, which makes them feel better about themselves. Finally, we connect these factors to mental health, which we measure using a standard depression scale to assess emotional well-being. Our main objective is to find out if there's a significant relationship between these variables and how our behavior on Instagram might be affecting our mental state.
Now, let's look at our topic statement to understand better our objective. In today's digital age, social media platforms like Instagram have become a huge part of daily life, especially among students and young adults. While these platforms offer entertainment and connections, they can also affect how we feel about ourselves and others. This project focuses on two main factors: how people use Instagram and how much their self worth depends on online feedback, also known as contingent self worth. For example, if someone's self esteem is based on how many likes or comments they get, they might feel anxious or disappointed when they don't receive the response they expect. We are interested in understanding how these patterns relate to mental health, particularly feeling of stress, sickness, or low self-esteem. By exploring this connection, we hope to raise awareness and promote healthy ways of using social media. In this presentation, we will walk you through the data we collected, how we analyzed it, and what we discovered about this important issue. Thank you.
So for our data descriptions, we are using Google Form as our main method of collecting our survey, and we have received a total respondents of 33. So for our survey content, we have four main sections, which are the respondents demographic, which asks for age, gender, and occupation of our respondents. Instagram usage, with which we use passive and active use measure to measure our respondents' Instagram usage. The fear of missing out is to measure the FOMO reaction within our respondents by using the social comparison scale. And lastly, we have depressive symptoms, which we use Center for Epidemiologic Studies Depression Scale, or CESD for short, as our main method of measuring. The online survey will utilize with validated instruments such as passive and active use measures, PAUM, the contingent self-worth scale, fear of missing out questions, and the CSD depression scale. For our key variables, we have grouped into four categories, which are the passive use, which involves browsing and viewing content on the Instagram app. We put it on a scale of 1 to 5. And the active use, PUMI items, which also involves posting and commenting on the app. We put on a scale 1 to 5 as well. Self-worth scale, which ties to the Instagram engagement, 1 to 5 on the scale. And finally, the mental health CSD depression score, which involves 20 questions, and each question has the scale of 0 to 3. And finally, we have the total respondents of 33. And within this 33, we have gender distributions of 60% are female and 40% are male.
Today we're going to talk about descriptive statistic, which is summarizing the organized data set that we have collected from our survey, in which we have processed, and now we're going to present it in front of you in terms of median, mode, and mean. And in the standard deviation, whether the data is have a very broad or a very accurate thing that implies to our responders. The first variable that we do our search is on active Instagram use, which the mean is 3.11, indicating a moderate level of activity among the respondents. The median, which is 3.1, and mode 3.2, showing that most students reported the average active use of that, while the standard deviation is 0.759, suggesting that low variation in responses, which most students fall within a similar range of activities. So which means that most of the respondents that we have use the Instagram at similar intervals, which can be stated by 0.759 standard deviation, which is a very low, indicating that very low amount of variability in our respondents. Here we have a box plot that reveals while most responses are tightly grouped, there is one potential outlier around the value of 1, indicating that one or more respondents may use Instagram less active than others, which the Instagram user is around number 1, while the others are within 3 to 3.5 and a bit below it, which is 2.5 range of means and median and mode. We are talking about passive Instagram score, in where the amount of the mean is 2.99, indicating a moderate level, still a moderate level of activity amongst respondents, but a little bit lower than the active users. The median is 3.00 and mode is 3.33, showing that most of the reported average usage. Then moving on to the standard deviation is 0.802, suggesting maybe a little bit more variation other than the active, which most the students fall within a similar range of activity still, since it will still below 1 and not more than 2 and maybe 3 like that. Then we can say that maybe there's some different opposing or opinion in the passiveness in Instagram score. Here we look at a box plot of the passive Instagram score. That is there one outlier which have one value in terms of the passiveness in using Instagram score, which means that they may rarely opening it, but still is they still use it once in a while, maybe once in a blue moon. Another important variable that we have done our research is in the self-worth, whether that the respondents are very value themselves most in terms of their social workings. Here, the mean of the response that we got is 2.63, in which suggesting that low to moderate self-worth among the participant, while the median and the mode is 3. We support that interpretation the most students are average at evaluating themselves. Next, the standard deviation is 0.85, which also show that most respondents are feeling the same way with themselves in the mirror, with most of them. Seeing the box and whisker shows that the interquartile range sits between the 3 and 2, showing the majority of the respondent answers with no outliers in the chart itself. We jumping into the depressive sum value. In the depressive sum value, the mean is 2.16, which is very low, not quite low, but still good in the group of the respondents. The median is 2.00 and the mode is 1.65, where we can see that it is backing up the idea where depression is slightly under control in this group. The standard deviation is 0.525, which is the lowest that we got in our data, is indicating that very low of variability in the respondent answers to represent that the mental state of respondents, all of our respondents are stable and healthy. From the chat given that we have processed data, it is clear that the range that the box occupies are rather low, which is around 2 and 2.5, with no outliers where most respondents are in the group of the box. To conclude, we can see that most people who are active on Instagram rather than being passive on it, in which they find their self-worth to be rather low. Indicated by the very low mean, median, and mode, this may seem that respondent feels a bit less of themselves when scrolling on Instagram. In the bright side, however, the users are more likely to be unstable, much more healthy in mental state due to the low mean of the depression score. So that's it. So moving to our next section of the presentation.
Alright, now we're moving on to numerical summary. This section will talk about the key variables collected through the survey, which are 32 respondents. It focuses on mental health and several independent variables related to Instagram usage. Now, for mental health score, measure from our survey, we get mean, which is 2.16, median 2.00, mode 1.65, and standard deviation is 0.524. Now, interpretation from the score, since means is 2.16, participants are on average, which indicates a better side of the mental health spectrum. Then, since median is 2.00, it indicates that half of the respondents score at or below 2.00. Since mode is 1.65, this indicates the most frequent score is 1.65. And since the standard deviation is 0.524, it indicates scores are tightly clustered around the mean. For the Instagram usage, throughout our survey, we get mean, which is value is 3.11, median 3.10, mode 3.20, and standard deviation 0.7588. For the interpretation, mean is 3.11, shows a moderate and slightly above Instagram usage. Next, median is 3.10. This indicates symmetrical distribution of scores. This shows that the typical middle response is also around moderate use, reinforcing the balance in the data. Next is mode is 3.2, which shows most frequently occurring score is 3.2. This means that a small majority of participants reported using Instagram just a bit more than average. Lastly, for the standard deviation, it is 0.7588. This indicates a moderate spread in usage scores. Most participant score fall within the range of about 2.35 to 3.87, which shows that while some users use Instagram less or more than average, most remain fairly close to the mean. And lastly, for the FOMO, which is fear of missing out, throughout our survey, we get mean, which is 2.56, median 2.60, mode 1.60, and standard deviation 1.0337. Now, for the interpretation, we get the mean is 2.56. This shows a moderate level of FOMO. This also suggests that participants generally experience a moderate level of FOMO, leaning slightly toward the lower side. Next, for median, which is at 2.6, this shows a higher than mean, shows half respondent report above 2.6. The slight difference suggests a possible left skew in the data, more lower values but some higher ones pushing the median up. For the mode, it is 1.6, which shows much lower than both mean and median. This tells us that a notable group of participants report very low in FOMO, even though others report higher levels. Lastly, for standard deviation, it is equal to 1.03. A standard deviation of 1.03 indicates moderate variability in FOMO scores. Most scores fall between 1.53 and 3.59, which means that the responses range from low to moderate high FOMO with fewer extreme values.
So now we go to the next is about multiple regression model. So firstly we go to the regression question first. For the equation, we have a depression score equal to 1.43 minus 0.35 for Instagram active use, plus 0.19 for FOMO item, plus 0.06 for passive score, plus 0.15 for self-worth, and plus with 0.25 for social comparison score, and plus application. So this table for FOMO score, active score, passive score, self-worth score, social comparison score, and depression score. So this table about coefficient, standard error, statistic, p-value, lower 95%, upper 95%, lower 95.0%, and upper 95.0%. So now we go to the regression statistic. And for the multiple arc, we have a 0.77. For arc square, we have 0.59. For adjusted arc square, we have a 0.51. For standard error, we have 0.37, and for observation, we have 30.
For the hypothesis, we use the null hypothesis or H0. In statistics, the null hypothesis is our starting assumption that there is no significant relationship between two variables. Any differences we see are assumed to be due to chance, unless we can prove otherwise with strong evidence. To test our hypothesis, we use two key tools, which is first the correlation or R value to tell us how strongly two variables move together. The second one is the p-value to help us decide whether that relationship is significant or just random. Here's the rule of thumb, which is if p is less than 0.05, reject the H0, while if it's greater than or equal to 0.05, we retain it. For our first hypothesis was there is no association between passive Instagram use and mental health. We look at behaviors like browsing without liking or commenting, classic passive use. The correlation value was R equal negative 0.13, which is very weak, negative correlation. The p-value was 0.473, which is quite high. That means the result is not statistically significant. In short, there is no strong evidence to say passive Instagram use impacts mental health, so we retain the null hypothesis. The next one is no association between Instagram activity level and mental health. Here we look at action like posting, commenting, and sending message, which is more active behavior for the Instagram user. The correlation was R equal negative 0.08, almost no relationship. The p-value was higher at 0.665. Again, not significant. So we also retain the null hypothesis for this one. There is no meaningful link between active Instagram use and mental health based on data. The third hypothesis was different. No association between FOMO or fear of missing out and mental health. Here's where things got interesting. The correlation was R equal positive 0.49, a moderate positive relationship, and the p-value was 0.0038, well below 0.05. This means the result is statistically significant. People who report higher FOMO also tended to report more mental health symptoms like sadness or depression. So we reject the null hypothesis here, and there is a relationship. To summarize, passive use has no significant link, and we retain the H0. For the Instagram activity, also no link, we retain the H0. For FOMO, there is a significant link, we reject the H0. In conclusion, our findings suggest that FOMO may be a key psychological factor connected to mental health symptoms, more than just quantity of Instagram use.
Next, we'll carry out the chi-square test. The chi-square test is a statistical method used to examine whether there is a significant relationship between two categorical variables. It helps determine if the distribution of data observed in sample differs from what we could expect by chance. In this study, we use the chi-square test of independence to explore whether there is a relationship between depression levels and the usage of Instagram. First, we'll have the chi-square test. On the null hypothesis, there is no relationship between passive use of Instagram and depression level. So here is our observation data, and we can calculate the expectation data by using the total in the observation data. After getting the data for the observation and the expectation, we can calculate the value of x squared and also the degree of freedom based on the size of the table. By that, we can calculate the value of p is equal to 0.65091. With that, we can compare with the significant level, which is 0.05, and by that we can say that we will reject the null hypothesis, which means that there is a significant evidence to show that there is a relation between the passive use of Instagram and depression level. Moving on, we also do the chi-square test on the null hypothesis there is no relation between use of Instagram and depression level. We also collected the data from the users and calculated the expectation data based on that. Similar with the last chi-square test, after getting the expectation and observation data, we can calculate the x squared, degree of freedom, and also value of p. And then, yes, we reject the null hypothesis again. Since the value of p is much higher than the significant level, which means that there is a significant evidence to show that there is a relationship between use of Instagram and depression level.
Hi everyone, I'll walk you through the results of our regression analysis in a quick and simple way. The R square is 0.593, which means about 59% of the variation in our dependent variable is explained by the model. And the adjusted R square is 0.508. From the ANOVA table, we see the F value is 7 with a significance level of 0.0004, which is well below 0.05, indicating that the overall model is statistically significant. Now, looking at the coefficient, the intercept is 1.43 and significant, meaning the predicted outcome when all predictors are 0 is 1.43. The FOMO score has a small positive effect, but is not statistically significant with a p-value of 0.09. The active score is significant with a negative coefficient of negative 0.355 and a p-value of 0.037, indicating a negative effect. The passive score is not significant with a high p-value of 0.66, meaning it doesn't strongly influence the outcome. The self-worth score is borderline with a p-value of 0.075, slightly above the 0.05 threshold. Lastly, the social comparison variable is significant and positively related to the outcome, with a coefficient of 0.25 and a p-value of 0.017. In summary, our model fits well, and active score and social comparison are key significant predictors. Thank you.
To conclude, our analysis reveals that several Instagram usage patterns, such as how frequently users browse, like, comment, or simply scroll, are meaningfully associated with mental health indicators like depressive symptoms and fear of missing out. This finding suggests that it's not just the amount of time spent on Instagram that matters, but the way we use it. Active engagement tends to correlate with more positive outcomes, while passive consumption may be linked to higher emotional distress. This really highlights the importance of being aware of our digital behavior. How we interact with the social media can influence our psychological well-being, even if we don't realize it. For future research, we recommend expanding the sample size and including participants from more diverse backgrounds, so the conclusions can be more representative and robust across different age group, cultures, or usage habits. Overall, our study reminds us that intentional and mindful social media use plays an important role in maintaining mental health.